Well, it's great to be here on DETV's Every Woman. Tonight we're going to have a great discussion on women in politics. Should be really interesting. We have a lot to say, I'm sure, on this couch. I'm so happy to be with my good friends here who are so inspiring and will have, I know, a lot to say on this topic. So we have Ashley Christopher, Rossana Arteaga Lapenza, Tanya Washington, and I'm Krista Griffith. I represent the 12th District of Delaware in the Delaware House of Representatives. I'm also a mom of 2 kids. I'm married for almost 19 years, and I'm CEO of the nonprofit organization known as the Children's Advocacy Center of Delaware. So with that, I'm going to turn the introductions over to my friends. Tanya?
Hello, everyone. I'm Tanya Washington. Everybody knows me as Tanny. I've been with the city for 33 years. I'm the chief of staff for the city of Wilmington in the mayor's office. I've been married for 34 years. I have 2 wonderful children. And as I said, I'm a lover of the city.
I'm Rossana Arteaga Lapenza, a Venezuelan American who has lived in Delaware for 17 years. Love Delaware and Delawareans. And I'm happy to be here. I'm a stay-at-home mom, an advocate, a passionate voice for the Hispanic and Latino community in Delaware.
Good evening. My name is Ashley Christopher. I'm the founder and CEO of HBCU Week Foundation, and I also serve as special assistant to Mayor Mike Przicki. I have a 17-year-old son who is a senior in high school, so I'm very busy with that. And I'm just really thrilled to be here to speak about all things Wilmington. I love the city. I pour my heart and soul into students here in Wilmington, and I just look forward to this conversation with 3 other giants in their industries.
Great. So let's dig in. Women in politics. So obviously it's a big year for women in politics with Kamala Harris leading the Democratic ticket. Rossana, I know you recently were at the DNC convention, so can you tell us any inside details or behind the scenes things that we didn't all get to see on TV as we were watching from home?
I think first of all, it was such an honor to be able to represent Delaware. I was the only Hispanic delegate, and it was an honor. It was such a huge responsibility to bring Delaware to the convention with grace, celebrating all that the President Biden has done for the state and for the country, for the world, truly. It was an amazing experience. It was a roller coaster of emotions. It was my first time going to a convention, and it was a roller coaster. Every single speech, every single person on that stage was so inspiring. We started with Michelle Obama also saying, do something, and empowering you to take charge. So that was so many things to tell and to share. It was a wonderful experience overall.
And there were so many speeches that I could listen to over and over and over again. But Michelle Obama's speech was just hands down. I've listened to it a few times, and it does make you want to get up and work and move and do something. Yes. So that was a joy. Ashley, what are you thinking this year with politics? And you work for the mayor, and you've been there for a while, so you get to see a lot of behind the scenes, as we know Tanny does too. What are you seeing for women in politics in the city?
Yeah, well, I'll say, starting with the DNC, I have to agree about Michelle Obama's speech. It was incredible, and I may be alone in these thoughts, but before the convention, when I heard that she was speaking, I was like hoping that she did not say, when they go low, we go high, because that was a school of thought that only lasted for a brief moment. I feel like the climate of politics right now requires a little bit more grit and fight. So I was so happy to see that she rebranded that to like, no, do something. So it was so exciting just to hear her speaking. And as far as just like women in politics, period, across the entire political landscape, I think it's incredible to see a lot of women stepping up. One of the things that I do encourage, my peers to consider when it's time to, select your elected official is to make sure you evaluate track records, impact, ethics, right? I am a person that's skilled in my trade. I do well for myself as a mother, a parent, a businesswoman. I perform well as special assistant to the mayor. but it's not because I'm a woman and it's not because I'm Black. I just happen to be Black and perform well and be qualified and skilled. So what I encourage people, around me when we have these conversations to do, when it's time to start, deciding who is going to represent you and your constituent base, look at track records, do the research, see what this person is actually going to, thank you. What are they going to do once they get in office, right? Because we are far beyond the times, right? This is not Family Feud or the Oscars where you can just root for everybody Black. Politics are not included in that, right? This is a dire time for us to choose the right leaders from local all the way up to the president. So I just encourage everybody to divert themselves away from that school of thought. Like, if you're a woman, I'm voting for you. If you're Black, I'm voting for you. If you're Hispanic, I'm voting for you. There's a lot more research we have to dive into to pick the best leaders to represent us.
That's a great point, Ashley. Thank you for that. And here in Delaware, I mean, we're small, as we all know, and we know everyone, or soon know everyone, and their cousins and friends and relatives, et cetera, neighbors. We have a great opportunity to get to know all the candidates. I mean, there's so many things that and events that candidates are showing up for. And it's the best thing. I've always found the best thing when I'm running for office is when someone tries to connect with me and really get to know, what I'm about, what I care about, what I stand for. And then it gives me the really more important opportunity to ask the constituent or voter what they care about.
Sure.
Because that's my job. And it does shape what we do and how we do it. I learn more about what I'm supposed to do in Dover by listening to the nuances of what people say to me are important to them. So I think there's great perspective. Tanny, what do you say about women in politics in the city these days?
As a Democrat, I'm very excited. We have a presidential candidate that is highly intelligent, has a good platform, and is not going to put up with the stuff, okay? So,
The stuff, right?
she's not going to put up with the stuff. But she's a woman that when you look at her, you don't say, I'm just going to vote for her because she's a woman. You're going to vote for her because of what she believes in and in her integrity. And that's important, not only at the national level, but also at the local level. So I want everybody to really be introspective right now. And when they look at their candidates, look at the character of a person, look at their record.
Right.
The record speaks volumes. I pride myself on attaching to, because I have a long storied life in politics. I've been there for 33 years. But every boss, every elected official that I've gotten behind, they have been highly intelligent, they have a high degree of integrity, and they have the city's best interests at heart. So think about that when you go to the booths. Think about not just gender or race. Think about who's going to take you forward.
Yeah, it's a really awesome point.
Yeah. So,
I always found this funny. When I was running in 2018, I ran against a great woman for a primary, and then I ran against another great woman for the general election, and I was able to win both. But the comment that always struck me as really interesting, if not a little upsetting, was, and I heard it over and over, was it's just a shame that three women, that there's women running against each other. And it would get me every time, because to me, I'm like, that's progress. How many decades have we seen men running against each other and nobody says anything? I mean, it's just how it's been. So why shouldn't women run against each other? And in fact, I think for both of those elections, we can say, despite the atmosphere that is in politics these days, that those are really nice elections. Yes, it's a little uncomfortable to run against somebody. Sure. You've got to keep your eye on the ball and really focus on your team and getting the job done, but it was really peaceful. I mean, it was for what I've seen happen over the last 6 years. It was very peaceful, and I hope that we can keep that tradition going. It reminded me, Tanny, of what you were saying with Vice President Harris, and the other comment that's always gotten to me is that when people criticize her and say she's not experienced enough, I'm like, that, I don't understand that. If you had a man who was prior vice president, senator, attorney general of the state of California, DA, I mean, yeah, what more do we need?
The reality is that a lot of the men that run for office and are elected officials sometimes are less qualified than women. We as women are always trying to make sure we have the credentials, enough credentials to be able to empower ourselves and to run for office or to support a candidate. But men don't think that way. So we actually, as women, need to claim the spaces and be our own, to push yourself to open the door and to keep breaking ceilings as well. So
Excellent point. Yeah. So I wonder I want to take the audience at what issues, since we are talking about what we're thinking about as important in politics with the 2024 election coming right up. What's important to everybody out? Does anybody want to raise their hand and tell us what's important? Yes, Mario.
State the local and what really not doing undoubtedly we need what your thoughts are about bitch who have yelled with it that hard or they get too hot meeting.
That's a great question.
It is a good question.
You know, I will say, I think if you just look at the changes that we've had in the General Assembly over the last 6 years, it's phenomenal. The General Assembly is beginning to look like the people of Delaware, all of the people of Delaware. I think we're at half and half, or a little more than half of the House are women.
Awesome.
I mean, my grandmother, when she was an immigrant from Ireland, she had only an 8th grade education. She worked as a maid from like the age of 12 through until she got married, moved to New Hampshire, raised a family. In the 50s, she ran for office. She ran for state senate and she won.
Nice.
And at that time, I think there were just a couple of women elected in the Senate there. And so that was always my inspiration. But to think that there would only be 1 or 2 just shocks me. And I hear Representative Stephanie T. Bolden talking a lot about when she was the only member of the Black Caucus in the House, you know, and how lonely that must have been. And so, you know, we have seen great changes, and I think you see that also in how policy is coming out and how legislation's coming out. Women are passionate about issues, for sure. So everybody's showing their passion by the bills that they're doing. I said that recently to Representative Ray Moore, who had this wonderful bill to provide school meals in schools for more children. She has been pushing and pushing and pushing for that piece of legislation for a long time, and finally she got a bill that got made so much progress. And I said to her, "Is this your passion bill?" She goes, "It is my passion bill." You know, so you see that enthusiasm and joy and really hard work happening. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that there are more women representing.
In our perspective, I think are crucial, are important. We are the ones who are building the community anyway. So why not taking the spaces to raise our voices and be the voice for those who is still shy enough to advocate for their community. We are the ones raising families, and we have done this for centuries, right? Like we are building, raising our families together. This is a therapy itself and a topic that we are all very passionate about, and we learn from each other too. So the fact that we don't have enough women in offices, and not just elected officials, but running companies and CEOs, so our daughters can see it. And as a mother of 3 boys myself, I want my boys to be able to see the first female president of the United States. I want my boys to see our state or Congress delegation to be all women, you know. That is important, so we can not really divide because of gender, but be inclusive and understand each other from different perspectives. I think that it's crucial.
Yeah. Now,
as
Rossana,
well.
you've been very involved in a lot of different issues. So if I asked you, what's your passion issue? What are some of the issues that you've really worked on that have been really important to you?
So, my story, it's I'm an immigrant, a child that grew up in North Carolina, and I couldn't go to college. So I went into banking, became a young mom, moved to Delaware following my husband's career, and Delaware has embraced our family, and I am forever thankful of the community that we have built here. But as a Venezuelan American, one of the issues that can be jumping into environments that were not mine, and I'm sorry for English as a second language right here.
Great.
But I realized that my community didn't have the voice because we come from a broken political system that has damaged us. So we literally put our heads down and work and provide for our families, but we don't claim the spaces. So, and as a mother of boys, I said to myself, it's like, what kind of example I want for my boys to see? A woman who is happily making dinners. I love cooking, and we are multifaceted, right? We're moms, we're wives, we're daughters, we are community advocates. We are so, being a woman, that's the beauty, that we can embrace all of these chapters in our life and different talents and different passions that we have. But it was very important for me to be the voice, so I can ask my kids to be that ally that I want them someday for them to be with their wives, if they choose to have wives, and as fathers. And as just a political figure, why not? So, and as a Venezuelan, we face the worst humanitarian crisis in the Western Hemisphere. So that was one thing that I was very uncomfortable, but I kind of said, I need to learn more about this. This is a topic that I don't manage. I didn't go to a public administration office or political science, and I say, no, I'm the person. I'm Venezuelan American. My kids are Venezuelan Americans, and they need someone that is the voice for what is needed, and being able to communicate with the great delegation of Delaware and all their political officials. It's been the greatest privilege. It gives me purpose, and we all looking for that, for purpose, a sense of purpose.
Yeah, you've done so much to educate our community about Venezuela, and you know, every year you help to raise the flag here in the city.
Yeah.
So which is exciting. What day when is that usually?
So, but for Venezuelans, our Independence Day is July 5th. So 3 years ago, we started raising the flag in downtown Wilmington and at Rodney Square. We've done it for 3 years. And it's the day right after July 4th, our Independence Day. So for my kids to see that, and for the community to be able to see that we are not really different. We like to divide ourselves white, brown, black, whatever little box they want to phrase us. But at the end of the day, the commonality of we want communities to be safe, we want the economy to work, we want schools to work for our families. That's what brings us together in general. So
thank you. That was great. Now, Ashley, what drives you? What issue has become so important? I mean, I think I might be, I know one thing for sure, but what would you say?
No, yeah, I just wanted to, if I could, go back to Marla's question. When she asked about getting young women involved, do we have the bench? I think it's really critically important for current electeds to start mentoring those to take their positions as they trickle out, right? Far too often you see people staying in positions probably a little longer than they should. And when it's time to run, it's time for them to exit, it's hard to find someone to fill that void. So I think that's a good way for people to start changing their perspective to get more young people involved in politics. Another thing that I noticed over the last several election cycles, one thing that I used to pride myself about is how Delaware campaigns and elections, they don't get as nasty as all of the surrounding states. And I always admired that, right? So like here in our state, we're able to keep a certain level of decorum. Even if you cannot stand your opponent, it never gets to a particularly nasty or below the belt attack. And I think this cycle, we're seeing a little different, right? Particularly against women, and not necessarily in our city election, but it's becoming exhausting to see. It's a turnoff. And I think that's something that will either turn off the next generation of potential electeds or energize them. So I would like to see us be able to, I mean, there's a way to tell somebody one good time that you don't like what they're doing, what they're representing, or, you know, there's a way to communicate that. But to consistently just attack below the belt, I mean, every time I open my mailbox, there's something in there that is just outrageous. And it doesn't involve truth, right? These are all just like personal attacks. So I think we got to get back to the old, you know, system that we had, at least when it came to a certain level of respect amongst the entire election process. Because if we're able to do that, I think, and then we couple that with this mentoring and recognizing when it's time to retire, I think we can see a good change in having some young people come into these elected positions. And what you were probably thinking was correct to address the question. It's always education for the Black and brown community. As an HBCU alum 2 times, graduating from Howard University. Awesome. And yes, HU. And the University of DC Law School. You know, the experience I got from these institutions, I can't even articulate how powerful it has been. While I was at Howard University, I served as vice chair of the Homecoming Steering Committee. If you've ever been to Howard Homecoming, hundreds of thousands of people descend upon the nation's capital to experience Howard Homecoming. But that's what gave me the clear backdrop on large-scale event planning. So I was able to take that and create HBCU Week here for students to get that cultural experience. So, I mean,
can you talk about HBCU Week? Because it's just amazing. It's so exciting.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, who knows about HBCU Week here? Everybody? But, well, good. That's great. Spread the word.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, I mean, for starters, I started this back in 2017 under the leadership of Mayor Mike Przicki. I brought this idea to him and Tanny, Chief of Staff, that I had to just start this initiative to get students directly involved in the HBCU process to see, you know, if it's an option for them, how can they attend, just to expose them to what the opportunity would look like. And in 2017, we had our first college fair where we marketed the event expecting about 200 students, but we got 700.
Wow.
So we knew that, hey, we might really be on something here. So we continued to develop the idea. And just last year, we had 13,000 students at our college fair.
13,000 students.
Yeah, I mean, it was crazy, but it's 13,000, thank you. But the laser focus is to just give students the opportunity to go to their choice HBCU and minimize that debt as much as possible. It changes your life. I mean, my HBCU experience taught me that no matter what room I walk into, I add value and I belong. If I'm the minority, if I'm amongst the majority, that energy doesn't change. And I'm not sure I would have gotten that if I didn't have that 4-year experience surrounded by people who looked like me with the same goals and drive and ambition. And I just think that that sense of confidence is something that every Black and brown student deserves to have as they matriculate into the real world.
Well, I imagine just by what you've said tonight, you are a mentor to so many people. And I would say mentors for elected officials don't have to be, or the new elected officials coming up, don't have to be elected officials. And perhaps you get more out of other people who are not elected officials, you know, to get that perspective, because it's really about how you interact or connect with people and how you feel about yourself and how you want to change things and improve things. So I think you would be a great mentor to that bench coming up. And as would you, Tanny.
Yeah.
Tanny, tell us about your 33 years in the city of Wilmington. Can we all give Tanny
That is amazing.
You don't even look old enough to work 30.
The things you
33 years
hear.
appointed.
Yeah, point.
33 years on the 9th floor.
Wow.
33 years between city council and the mayor's office.
Wow.
So what I'm going to just take this in a totally different direction.
Great.
Because I'm really interested in not only my panel members, but also the audience. I mean, we're coming up on September 10th. It's a very important election on where the city is going. So I'm just curious to see where people, what they're looking for in terms of an elected official, and, you know, just to get an ideal of where they see the city now, where they want it to go, and who that person, maybe you can keep the name to yourself, but what you're looking for in terms of people's platforms and policies going into this September 10th election.
That's a great question. Yeah. Does anybody want to answer that?
No? No? Is this
Oh, yes, you do.
Well, and I want to answer too because I had a question too that's so wrong with one. I'm always looking for someone who's overall, I feel like, for lack of a better word, even keeled. I want someone who is focused overall on the bigger picture. And like, as we touched on this earlier, a couple of you touched on it regarding the get deal thing and then race being bigger than if you're male or female. So those are the kinds of things I'm looking for. I'm looking if you're going to make sound decisions. So we mentioned earlier about it being small here. So a lot of decisions can be made based on you knowing a little more than you should know, maybe personally, about someone. So overall, I want to know that you can know something personally about someone and still operate towards the larger picture. And with that being said, my question is question back to you is, do you believe in the thought of it's not appropriate to speak about politics? Because I find in certain social circles that if you speak about politics, a lot of people aren't comfortable being themselves and being honest about who they're actually going to vote for and why. You know, so this is women in politics. I feel like we should kind of touch on that as a group on how we are navigating those friendships, those relationships where we all don't agree. I expect to be in agreement where no one agrees. I love those conversations, but I find that a lot of people don't really like that. So, you know, along the same lines of what you're asking, but just throwing that out is what.
Well, that's a great question. I mean, I think it depends, right? Like, I don't mind having discussions and arguments and disagreements. I get excited about that. You know, it's just more fun to hear what people have to say and, challenge me a little bit and vice versa. But I think there's some people in a group, and there could be toxicity in the group. And when that's happening and voices aren't able to be authentic, you can sense that. And so I think that's when the conversation turns. You know, I think it's unfortunate because this is, the exchange of ideas is so critical to our democracy. And the authenticity of those ideas is critical. And when you can't have those discussions, either be it politics or policy or what have you, to me it's crushing, but it's a fact, it's a reality, it's here. So I hope one day we can move past the negativity that we've all experienced so that we can have more freer discussions. But for the moment, I think it depends on the group. I don't know, Tanny, what do you think?
I think it depends on the setting. But for me personally, I consider myself very authentic and open. And, I try to appreciate and respect other people's opinions. But at the same time, you will know mine. So, I mean, anybody who knows me knows that I'm just going to share what I feel, But we need to have these conversations.
Yes.
We don't need to shy away from them at this critical juncture in our life, And so I would encourage people, even when it's uncomfortable, to engage that. To kind of push it along. If they're not comfortable with it, then by all means, then just leave it alone. But it's good so you can have that that back and forth and appreciate other people's perspective, but at the same time share your own.
So, did I mention that I grew up in North Carolina earlier? It's a red state. And it's a blessing to be able to have a complex conversation. It can be as complex as you want it, but it also can be as simple and give an olive branch. I think the environment of politics that we have recently, it's very toxic, as we all know, and we need to withdraw ourselves from that environment. We need to be, no one is going to convince people, but we need to be able to have rooms, spaces like this one, and have difficult conversations where instead of putting your opinion on somebody's throat or vice versa, it's you're using your human commonality to bring people together. Oh, I understand why you think like that. I didn't consider it. And more importantly, I think it is extremely important to open more spaces with your family and with your friends and with colleagues, everyone really, even your Uber driver, everyone that will have the interest in having these sort of conversations, because there's so much misinformation, disinformation. Our communities are being victim of that. So when I hear, this happens a lot to the Hispanic community, when there are AI with the technology that we are blessed to have, but also a little curse, we need to be able to have smart conversations and monitor. It's like, oh, by the way, here's a link of a different side of the story, and flip the coin. And instead of being confrontational, ask about, so tell me more about it. Just like we do with our kids at the kitchen table. It's like, okay, tell me about it. Why do you think that? And try to open rooms for complex conversation, as I mentioned. I like difficult conversations, so, but we need to take the confrontational aspect away.
Well, that's a great point. And just to rest on the pipe for a second, apparently we're going to take a little break and we'll be right back.
DETV has been Delaware's premium provider of creative digital and broadcasting solutions that bridges communities and connects people. We create great stories for all audiences. We deliver independent news throughout Delaware. We are digital platform innovators. And we develop marketing and sales solutions so you can stay connected to your audience. Now, why do we do what we do here on DETV? We do it because we care. So, keep watching and follow us on all of our social media platforms. Remember, DETV, online, on air, on time.
Welcome back to Women in Politics. We had a great question from an audience member about what it's like these days to talk about politics amongst friend groups, family groups, etc., and how to navigate that when it gets uncomfortable. And Ashley, you hadn't had a chance yet to answer it. So what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate the question. I think it was framed, is it appropriate, to talk about politics? And my answer is probably going to be a little different from everybody, but I would completely abandon whether or not it's appropriate. I think it's essential. I mean, right now in this political landscape, you have got to take every opportunity to have these discussions, to talk about the candidates, their track records, and how this election can affect you. So I would absolutely abandon that thought about whether or not it's appropriate and just have the conversations. I mean, yeah.
So what happened? Okay, all right, let's play this out, Ashley. So you're, you know who you want to vote for president, and you know who you don't want to vote for president, and someone who wants to vote for the other candidate is just coming at you and won't give up and is digging in, and gets to be to a tenor where like it gets uncomfortable. So what do you, and that happens statewide.
Yeah.
It happens in city politics.
Yeah.
It happens in state politics. So what do you do when you get in those? Because we've all been there, right? We've all been are we going to duck and hide, or are we going to duke it out? Like what do you do? What do you suggest?
I mean, I think we all have that instinct and know when it's time to walk away, right? Yeah. But I don't think that we should, I guess, worry so much about all the what ifs before we go into the conversations, instead of just going into it with the best intention, speaking your piece and articulating why you think this person should or should not be in office. And I think, we just try our best to maintain decorum during the conversation. And if that's not possible, you got to walk away. But I mean, like Tanny and I in the mayor's office, we talk about all kinds of things, the elections on all the levels.
Every day at 9 o'clock, around the table with all the staff, and they're made up of African American and Caucasian and different everything. They're just we are the world, and we have very candid conversations.
Yes.
And sometimes people leave with hurt feelings, but I think we're comfortable enough that we're like family in the mayor's office. Actually, we are family, and we can freely express ourselves. And we've had people stomp out, walk out, slam doors, and then we come back and love each other. Right? It happens a lot. But I mean, we get value out of having those candid conversations, because I get to hear other people's perspective that I may not thought about things a certain way, and then sometimes you get more sensitive to certain issues, right? And so I welcome it all day long.
Right. And you also, you never know what someone's going to say, right? You should assume that they're going to be in a particular position. The other day, it was the first day of early voting, so I just wore a generic T-shirt that said "Vote," period. It didn't say not a specific color, no specific animal, nothing. And I was at the store, and a guy came up to me and said, "I love your T-shirt." And I was like, wonder what, where is he at and all of this? I'm like, oh, why? Why do you like the shirt? And so and I talked to him, I feel like I have to tell everybody how to vote, when to vote, all of that. And I go, why do you like the shirt? He's like, because it's just so important. And then we got into a longer conversation, and then I think our frozen goods were melting, and so we ended it. But it was kind of nice. It didn't get bad. It just, and he had some differences than I did, but
even when you don't wear a nice T-shirt, and I have been known to do that, and I walk around my neighborhood and it invokes conversation. Sometimes it's uncomfortable, but I like people to know where I stand, and I get to hear their perspective, as I said, and it's just, it's the needed thing to do. You know what I mean? You have to do these things.
And it is an uncomfortable sometimes situation to be talking about politics or religion, because it's being taught to us that we do not talk about politics and religion. And I think it's time to change, and like I said before, flip the coin and embrace those uncomfortable conversations, because you cannot see the stars when there's darkness. So we need to be able to force sometimes and see where our community stands, what's important for the other person that he votes differently from me or my family. I know we all have Republican friends and Democrats friends, and we can be very passionate about in our different streams. Doesn't mean that the other one is completely bad. We just need to come more to the middle and embrace one another. I like to have difficult conversations and learn, like you said, from a different perspective. Am I missing something? Oh, I wonder why that person is thinking that way. Oh, so I think
I'm glad you said that, because the divisiveness right now that's going on, not only at the national level, but at the local level as well, is really disturbing to me.
It is. It is very sad.
It really needs to stop, and people really need to embrace the candidates with their record, what they have done. And that's what I try to do. I say, okay, don't tell me what you're going to do. Tell me what you've done.
Yeah. And I think we all can identify that politician that likes that it's only at the events to take a picture or there to shake hands. We as women have our instinct, which we take pride of that, right? Like we know how to identify, and it's a thankless job. We need to embrace more public servants, elected officials that do the job and put their family also in jeopardy in a different lens from everybody else. We need elected officials to take those leadership roles, independently of or their gender and the background. But we recognize nobody can fool the people. We, the people, cannot be fooled, and we need to continue to empower that. as well.
I like that. Well said.
So what next? How about anyone in the audience? Has anybody had, though you've had those uncomfortable conversations, I'm sure. How did you handle them?
Don't care. Don't talk about the candidate, just talk policy. And then it becomes a very either short conversation, or you realize the other person is only voting for someone because they were either told to or just because they like them.
Yeah.
So if you talk politics with me, I never mention a name. It's only policy.
Yeah.
If you want to put immigration on the table, let's talk immigration. And it was interesting enough, a lot of people agreed with Trump's immigration policy when I only talked policy. They actually thought I was talking about the Democratic candidate, for the president time. But if you really just talk policy, then you're really, really challenging the other person and where they truly stand politically. And it's healthcare, anything. So next time you talk politics, say, let's play a game. We're not going to talk about names. You're not allowed to mention names.
We're being challenged.
I love that.
Oh, that's a great idea.
I love that.
Really back.
All right, well, throw some policy ideas out that we're going to do that with.
Pressure.
Interesting.
Just shout them out, everybody.
It's the same thing. Let's think about the city. No, but it's the same thing that when it comes to.
Let me tell you, so me and my friends, we talk politics all the time. You know what really grinded our gears one time to live in the city? There was an issue, I don't know if anyone saw it, about the budget, I think, to put flowers in Rodney Square. Do you remember that?
Do you remember that?
It's a while back.
Is what?
Was a while.
I think it made the paper or something.
Yeah.
And we were just so upset because we like the flowers on Rodney Square. But people were just like really, and then there was like there's multiple things. Like we live in the city, we go we eat on Market Street. We don't believe in the gentrification, but it's a whole nother situation.
Yeah. We all have topics that we actually care about.
Here's a crime. I don't want to be asked what the time is when I'm eating outside of Mardea 10 times. And my friend used to walk from
This time it does because
from one part of Rodney to Chase, to work, and she passes every 5 seconds. But poverty is not a crime. But I'm like, no. Let's do something about being hassled to work because you're making it uncomfortable for me to live here. Uncomfortable for me to even want to have a business here.
Yeah,
and having conversations with some people like that is really difficult.
I love what you mentioned about playing the games of not mentioning the name, because that also applies to gender. And talking about women and politics, if you talk to someone about someone's policy and avoid talking about the gender, it brings a different context to the discussion too. If you, and it's sad, and this is also an empowering moment. If you don't tell anybody that you're a woman running for office or an elected official, the respect that is in the room changes completely. The perspective changes completely. So that is also a wake-up moment for us to how we support women running for office when it's an actual woman or it's a male. It's an interesting game what you have put on in the table.
Like just thinking about COVID, right? And there's a lot of stuff in the news about COVID. Like this person opened up the first hotel to take in people either struggling or homeless during COVID. And you'd be like, who is it? Right? And some people may actually think that's a male, it's actually wrong. There was a woman who set up the first hotel to take in people from COVID, and then a male mirrored that and bought a hotel to do the same thing. But if you don't know that, you think the man did it. No, the Sheraton was the first hotel that took people in from COVID. And do you know who said that happened? It's like, we are praising a man for taking on a model that a woman set up, but she's not backing and saying, actually, I did it first, but just that's not who she is. And that's the politics we're used to, but now it's just, if you don't know, you don't know, and if you don't want to know, you're not going to do either. But it's like, those are the conversations I pull. Like, who is this person? You're like, oh, it's this. I'm like, actually, it's not. So it's like, what do you know? You can't.
And it is interesting how we bring people in our communities together to political topics. I used to be this person that hear the word politics and we run away because there is a negative connotation to the world. And like, no, I am a stay-at-home mom. I'm not a politician. But every issue at the table that we all care for, it's a political issue. And we need to be able to embrace these conversations as well. Education, gun sense, gun violence, immigration, all of these things are political issues that the changes happen locally all the way up to the federal level as well. So.
I think it also goes back to the fact that the more we have these conversations, we realize we're not alone. Whether that's a race or our gender, I think a lot of times people expect us to move in unison, right? And the idea of moving in unison is different to everybody, right? We're not wolves. You know, we have thoughts, we have personal life experiences that color our decisions. And I think when we're having this conversation, I believe this is what you were also touching on, that you understand where someone's coming from, you know. And she mentioned a little bit earlier about policies around quote-unquote gentrification. And I say quote-unquote because I am an implant to the city. I've lived in Philly, I've lived in DC, I've also lived in Baltimore. And when I first came to Wilmington, I think right before President Key went into office, I was like, I would never live down here. I would just never live down here. And I lived out in New York a long time. And then when I came back to the city after some things changed, I wound up moving into the city, and I'm someone who continues to live here in the city. So sometimes when I hear certain things about policies, it's the idea of some decisions have to be made. Some uncomfortable things have to happen to try to make it comfortable for whoever it fits for. So just being careful of not having a picture. Like if you, to her point about taking the names off the table, taking a race off the table, taking gender off the table. What kind of person lives here? Someone who works locally, someone who, may make a certain amount of money. They may want to be on foot. They may not want to drive. That can be anybody.
Yeah.
And so we can't make policies or focus only on policies that, the sexy stuff, right? And make it uncomfortable for someone to walk in the room and say, well, actually, I'm happy that happened. I'm happy this is different, right? This is comfortable for me. I'm just using it as an example. And I think, having these kind of sessions where we can just say, well, I like that I can walk to work every day, or I like, that I have other options of buildings to live in and things like that. So yeah, that's my spiel.
Let me just say this, I'm sorry, don't mean to interrupt you, but that whole gentrification issue has really burnt my bridges, because the whole, I would just say that a lot of people don't understand what gentrification means, right? And so we've had this whole campaign about the city is gentrified, but there has not been displacement of one race and another one that's moved in, okay? Let's be clear on what gentrification is. We have not displaced anyone. So yeah, while there are 4,000 new residential dwellings in the city of Wilmington, there was not displacement of another race for one to come in. Okay, so that's been my bugaboo about that whole issue. So I just had to say that.
But it is.
That's the lack of education part.
Right.
They're listening to sound bites or someone
Me,
making
it's a
one statement and not really, because I happened to be I'm walking with a county person and was educating on something, because again, you saw a snapshot on Facebook that made something look, they just say, should we be supporting these people because they don't really see it, X, Y, and Z? But then when you had an actual conversation, and then people were actually calling and to explain, listening to them explain it, it was like, okay, look at the big thing.
Yeah, it's not happening. Right.
So once again, what you're saying is not just because people have not been displaced.
Right.
And that's that we keep it. And then finding out that there is a benefit to having in school 1,000, that brings in more tax and then it helps to beautify a city.
Yeah.
If you don't know that, then yes, you say, oh, they should just push this out. No, they're not pushing this out. They're making it a better place to live.
Yes. Clap to you.
Yeah. We've talked a lot about race and gender. I just want to throw this in here. Age is also really important to make sure you're talking to different generations about what's important to them. I frequently talk, and he always says he hates politics and he gets a grumpy face on him, but my son's 16. I don't know if you talk to your son about this stuff too.
All the time.
Yeah. And it's so interesting. When I bring it up, he's like, I don't want to talk about it. But then he will turn around minutes later and bring an idea with your kids too, like what, like, hey, this is what I think. And then I get to push him a little bit and he pushes me back. And it's just really interesting to hear what he's saying because he's seeing things differently than I am, not only because of his perspective, but because of the media he's looking at versus the media I'm looking at, what he's watching versus what I'm watching, what kids in his class are saying, what they're texting each other. So it's, and then my father too, who was 88, like almost 88, I talk to him often, and he and I are pretty much simpatico on all of the issues, but sometimes he says something, I'm like, wow, Dad, I didn't think you were that on top of it. But anyway, Dad, if you're watching, I know you're.
But now that you mention that, do you feel like the younger generation is far more progressive, right? And people of my age, a little older, a little bit, or like in the middle, right? I find that I'm having trouble dealing with the far left because what I'm struggling with is that there's not a certain accountability on how some of these policies come to fruition, on how do you make these, everything has to be free. How do you make it free for everybody? Can't afford that. Like how are you going to get there? And that's what I'm struggling with. And I'm just an older lady. I'm just saying.
I found talking to my son's generation as friends, I've gotten the whole mix from far left to even some more conservative views that are more, much more conservative than me. And so when I hear them, I often ask, like, where are you getting that information? And that's what kind of concerns me is the information gathering and what's trusted and what's not.
But like I mentioned earlier, we are at the age where our attention span is very short. We need to be careful with that on all components. We also need to be careful of where do we get the news, misinformation, disinformation. I continue to mention that because I know in particular my community is a victim of that. It's easy to put a clip, to put a technology on it, and then you believe it, and you don't have the time to dig deep into it. There is a very small group of people that like politics and then embrace policies and know who's doing what, but the reality is that the majority of America are focusing on putting food on the table, and what they see when it comes to politics, it's my gas is very expensive. It's hard to take my kids out on a vacation, and it's hard to put food on the table. To embrace those difficult topics and bring people together, having difficult conversations is, let's make sure that our community knows how to dig deep into the factual, the information, so they can be able to make a decision. And if they make a decision, whether it's not what we agree on, that is what a democracy is at the end of the day, right? Like we need to embrace the different perspectives from people, I believe. So.
Okay.
What else? What's going on?
Delaware politics.
Yeah,
let's talk about
Delaware
it.
politics.
Let's talk about that part.
We have someone else.
Okay.
I actually have a question. What would you say to somebody who's a millennial, a Gen Z, Gen Y? How would they get involved in politics right now if they wanted to do so?
Well, that's a great question. I have a couple friends of mine, their daughters have expressed interest in helping me, and so that's a good way. But I see there being a lot more grassroots efforts to get people involved in from the younger generation on, because we need that. I think that's been one of the exciting things about the change of events that put Vice President Harris, on the top of the ticket. So I think anything and everything. We need to do anything, like student groups. The March for Our Lives was a great way to get young folks involved in the prevention of gun violence. So there's been a lot of efforts like that didn't exist when I was growing up. So I've been excited about that. But what else? What other things?
I will say that tying it to the different generations, this is a very unique time in history. I have a 22-year-old brother, and every time we talk about policy or politics or religion or anything, I say, okay, do something about it. What are you doing? And my solution from my corner is hopefully that they can see, lead by example. I'm doing this, I'm knocking doors, I'm getting engaged. I need to embrace the policies and learn more, and hopefully they will see the efforts and you'll spark curiosity and they'll get involved. And the same thing with my 16-year-old son. You just need to lead by example, like Michelle Obama, to kind of circle it back to the beginning. Do something. Don't wait for the party to call you. And if you care about clean water, do something about it. If you care about the streets and clean streets, do something about it. I think empowering them, this is a different generation, because yes, even though we are facing a lot of conflicts worldwide and locally, our grandparents were the ones fleeing their countries to look for a safe harbor. Many of us have struggled economic depression, not depression 1940s, but it's a struggle in general. But so this is the generation that has less struggle, and there are so much information there that I think the power of media and technology, we just had to spark curiosity and empower them to make a change with something.
Is anyone's kids here interested? Is your son interested in politics? Your boys, your kids? Any like?
Oh no, my son is so far away from that. He has no interest in politics. But I was going to say it is really important to, as you were saying, to make sure we're spreading the word and getting things out there so people can get involved. But to encourage millennials or even people younger to get involved in politics, I think Delaware is the best place to do that, right? All of our elected officials are so accessible, right? Like from the president down, right? It's crazy. Like who doesn't have a picture with Joe Biden? Right? So everybody does. So I mean, I would like really dive into like the research of different candidates and try to make contact and do some volunteering. And then beyond that, see if there's a job that you're interested in. I don't know. I would ask you, are you sure? If you said you want to work in politics, no. It's a fantastic opportunity for anyone that wants to get involved. But I would really recommend to just do some research and reach out to candidates that you're impressed with and see if you can get involved that way.
That's
I've drugged my kids through politics. I mean, my oldest will be 34, so they've been there with me from the very beginning, and my daughter actually works for a politician right now. But I guess in terms of the kids, the millennials, it's really kind of getting them to look at issues just that matters to them, right? Because I want to get Social Security one day. I don't know about y'all, but I want to get it. And so they're not looking at Social Security like the way that I'm looking at that issue, right? They're not. I mean, they're staying on a job, maybe 2 or 3 years. They're not worried about a pension. I'm worried about my pension. I mean, it's a different education that needs to happen, right? Yeah. So.
And what I said is spark curiosity, but also my perception as a migrant, an immigrant, really, and the reality too, even if you're not an immigrant, the reality is that you want the next generation to have access to things that you didn't have.
Yeah.
That's like the ultimate goal, right? You want your kids not to have the same struggles. I know my parents work really hard to move the generation forward. So being able for generate millennials and generation X and Y and Z, all of them, to have skin in the game and to feel empowered. It's as easy as writing a letter complimenting something or complaining about something. Tell me about it. In the kitchen table, let's talk about what do you see, what do you don't like, and having these complex conversations in the house with your family. I think it's a good way to spark the new generation of young politicians as well.
Well, I think like before we leave here, because like I said, I keep saying it, September 10th is coming up.
Yes.
Tuesday. It's very important. So at the state level, at the local level, what are people really looking for? I want to hear something like that's going to get me going. So
Delaware politics.
Delaware politics, please.
I think it's the authenticity of the candidates and the work that they do.
That's what I like.
And I heard you earlier mention there's a lot of negative talk that's going on right now. Who's who and who's right. And the reality is that we need to continue to educate our circles about the facts, about the policies, the work that people have done, the track record that people that are running the current office positions have truly done to serve the people of Delaware. There's a great opportunity to have an impact across the state from top to bottom and to unify the state. And I don't know that everyone truly understands the importance of this particular election, specifically the impact that it has for women. So being here in front of all of you and listening to your voices, really encompassing the power of women, the power that we have through skirts to pants, and the work that we have done is so pivotal for the state. And I just really hope that women, Delawareans, but women in particular, are really paying attention to the legacy of the work that the current candidates that are running for office, for all positions, really have done to serve the state well.
I'm glad you said that, because I think on some level that we have given grace to some women,
Others,
that deserve it or not, we've given grace to. And so your track record is your track record. And I hope when you guys leave here, you understand that even if you're a woman, just because you're a woman, you don't deserve my vote. Your work needs to speak to me, needs to speak to my heart, needs to speak to my mind. And so I hope when we leave here today that we understand that while women, this groundswell with Kamala, but we need to stay true to our character and what's important to us.
At the same time, I will kind of flip the coin a little bit. At the same time, I'm on the position of like, I am tired of all these male politicians that have been there for a long time and they don't understand my perspective as a woman, making decisions on my body, on my family. So I feel like, why not? We continue. The female voter, it's extremely important on this election and has been in the past and will always be, because we truly can flip any results if we actually dig into the policy. But I feel like they have done, male elected officials have done their job and their duty, but why not give the same space to all women elected officials and see how they can mess it up? I doubt that they will mess up the same level that the male counterparts
There's
have.
some people got track records. I'm just saying, there's some people got it.
But I'm willing, I understand that, like, don't vote for a female, for a woman, just because we have that in common, the gender. But why not? Like, there's a different perspective and
I
understanding.
think we can look at Congress and see some women that shouldn't be in Congress, right? I don't know the name.
See, we're sparking uncomfortable conversations and positions. I love it.
you live in the city?
I do.
Okay.
Yes.
We have, so like, as a city resident, right?
Yes.
Lynn, 2017, I bought my house in the city.
Yes.
So I like where the city has been going consistently every year, right? I've seen the benefits. My best friend has moved here. She probably moved to the city after I managed her for years and years. I like the businesses that are there. I like the fact that insight's coming. I like that tour. Businesses she's in I can teach you for I have, and like at a poker table, right? I have no reason to take a risk in changing my bet right now. I'm going to vote for the candidate who is consistent on building on top of what has already been done because I like what's been done. The candidate that's mentioning, you know what, it's time to take a left and let them know we're turning it. Like, I like where we're going. So if you're not consistently going to build on what's been there consistently now, which I like and what I see has helped our city, and you're like, you know what, it's time to take a redirection, I would agree with that. Because what does that redirection want to do with the foundation that was built?
Yeah.
You know, and especially as a city resident, I know what the city looked like when I was a kid. I didn't live in the city, because I was raised in Delaware. And when I went to Washington State and I came back, I was like, listen, it's great. So it's just, it's not time to make that change yet. I mean, I'd love to bet on women. Unfortunately, I haven't heard a women candidate mention how she's going to build on what the city has consistently done in the past 8 years, and that's just mine.
Good.
And that's what I was saying. Actually, piggyback on, I think we should give ourselves permission, just never sound bad, to vote selfishly. Because if everyone actually goes and votes, to your point earlier, that is our permission to vote for what's important for us, because I'm expecting you to vote what's important for you and make the best person, right? Because otherwise, if I'm expected to always worry about everybody else instead of actually voting for the issues that I find to be valuable, it devalues the process. And I think that's the age thing. I think that may be part of the break with some of the younger generations, right? Because, oh, it's not cool to vote for this, or you're not cool because you think this way, right? Whereas if we just gave permission for cats to think the way they want, or like you vote for who you want to vote for, then it's less pressure. It's important to, you're given a space to have an opinion, use that space. And we're all just going to use it, and that's it. Like, it doesn't have to, I don't want to say be that deep, that's layman, but it really doesn't. I'm going to go vote because people are doing it anyway.
Yeah.
Right? We can all sit have this conversation, and we're like, we're all going to vote for Billy Bob, and then they go in, they're like, actually, I'm vote for Vanessa and give the space for people to be able to just go ahead and do what it is that they wanted to do.
I appreciate that. That's good.
Speaking of voting, I want to say, speaking of voting, has anybody ever attempted the early voting process? Oh, I have big hands. Okay, great. And what are your thoughts? Yay, nay, good?
You can vote now.
Yeah, you can vote now. I will say, you know, especially for, you know, my son was in the hospital over the winter for several months, and I was thinking about the early voting recently because all of those caretakers and the nurses, the doctors, the aides, the clerks, everybody, 12-hour shifts, 7 to 7. When are they going to really get a chance to vote? And you know, and you know, people who are sick or going away, like, it's just such a great option. So if anybody is tied up on the 10th of September, you can vote now. Early voting spaces. Yes.
One of the things that I want to end is the importance of actually going to the polls and vote. Like, democracy is, we have heard it so many times, but democracy is very fragile. And the participation rate in the United States of America, it's so small in comparison to our overall population. So at the end of the day, those few that go to the polls are the ones making the decision for all of us. So I will encourage everyone to talk to 10 people and take them to the polls and write together and make sure they have their coffee and they're awake. Because this election is truly crucial, but every single election, every 2 years,
And thank
it's
the
crucial.
people that are working at those polls, because they are working long days for not a lot.
And I like pushing that button.
Yeah, I do too.
I just get great satisfaction.
Yeah, I just want to say all elections and excluding
School board, thank you. Great point. Notice that. We've not mentioned that. We should have started that.
state is in relative to education. It's critical that we get out to school board meetings as well as elections. So they
That's a great point. Thank you. Yep. And those are mostly in May. So.
Okay, it's wonderful.
All right. So, wow. Woo. So that's the conclusion on women in politics. We had a lot of fun topics within the topic that were great and inspiring. And everybody go vote.
All right, so vote. So.